we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
Thanks to Chris Cooper for filling in last week, and we have a lot of news to cover this week.
I'm going to give Andy a pop quiz to see if he's been following all the convention and political news while he was away.
Okay, I was on the internets, so I was. Well, I mean, we're certainly going to talk about the finish up on your conversation about the Democratic convention. It did feature LGBT speakers and issues, and the mother of one of the 49 people slain at the Pulse in Orlando spoke, and we'll bring that to you.
In Mississippi, federal judge Carlton Reeves, our new favorite guy, slaps down another attempt by Governor Phil Bryant to hold on to his anti-LGBT law.
We had a little setback in federal court for interpreting sex discrimination as covering sexual orientation discrimination.
But a new Navy ship is being named for Harvey Milk.
And Vice President Joe Biden presided over a gay wedding in his house.
At the Naval Observatory. See, we can segue these stories.
There we go.
You may be curious about the Olympics, which are about to start. As we're taping this, there are more than 40 out LGBT athletes. The rest of them are closeted. There's optimism, the optimism that you've heard about ending AIDS worldwide in 2030, it's a goal, is fading amidst reduced funding and difficulty getting people with HIV on drugs, even when they're available sometimes. I would say there are mixed opinions, but we'll discuss all that. And Andy will review London theater, including some shows that you can see around the world in cinemas.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So how about that Democratic convention?
Did you get a chance to watch any of it
in London? I watched a lot of it in the middle of the night. I mean, it was the big speeches weren't on until 4 a.m. in London.
Yeah.
So I watched those online. But I watched a lot of it, including the cons, and while it was live, and that was quite moving. But, you know, I mean, I watched Hillary's speech. She's certainly integrated us into it, as did most of the speakers.
Yes.
And she released her AIDS plan this week as well.
Massive, comprehensive AIDS plan. Whoever wrote it did a good job and knows what they're talking about.
You mean she didn't write it herself?
No.
Who is she, Melania Trump?
Don't you pick on my Melania.
Oh, okay.
But, well, do you think Trump is going to remain the candidate, or are they going to dump him?
Well, you know, Mike Pence, the running mate, as you know, is the favorite of the Koch brothers. So Trump could resign his running. He could say, I'm not running anymore. And they would put Pence in. Pence is an idiot and quite right-wing.
It doesn't have to be Pence.
But he would be a fresh face. And the Koch brothers, this is for the Koch brothers, not us. The Koch brothers would get what they want.
Well, the question is who the 168 or however many there are electors in the Republican Party would pick, and they can pick anybody.
Oh, you mean after the election?
No, now.
Now.
But by sometime in September.
The Republican National Committee decides?
Yes.
Those
and they
168?
can pick anyone. As we have tried to remind our viewers repeatedly, these parties are private entities. They are not operating through some kind of federal law or anything. They can do anything they want.
And Trump says the system is rigged.
And this will prove it. But we don't want him to disappear because we want to beat him. And if they put someone else in, then our chances may
Donald
change.
Trump, I'm not going to be running anymore. I cannot stand the way my family is being attacked. I don't know.
So what do you think of Tim Kaine as the vice presidential?
Well, you know, he did speak about protecting you no matter who you love. And he did not say it in Spanish.
He's been pro-gay, but my objection to Tim Kaine is he talks too much. Really, he went on and on when Hillary introduced him in Florida as her pick.
Yeah.
You know, she spoke for 2 minutes saying, here's Tim Kaine, and he got up and spoke for 45 minutes.
Look, This is the Gay
And then he
USA.
spoke for an hour at the convention.
This is the Gay USA show
Are you saying we talk a lot?
for an hour every week. But and then there was Obama. I liked his quote.
Here's what I want to talk about with Obama. He gives this beautiful speech, but he talks about the basic values of hard work and humility and taking responsibility, and that's what America is. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, not anymore, it isn't.
No.
Our values these days are the Kardashians,
Right.
wealth, fame. He's talking about a country that I don't recognize these days for the most
In
part.
that kind of atmosphere, somebody even like Donald Trump could be elected president.
Exactly, a reality TV star. So that's why I thought it was actually, aspirational, but a little out of touch.
Well, it's very complicated for the Democrats because he has been president for the last 8 years. And so, yes, he inherited a whole mess from Bush economically
yes.
and in the Middle East.
And the Republicans have been standing in the way of him making
yes,
progress.
All that is true, but that makes it tough to say we need change. We do need change, and Hillary certainly alluded to it in her speech. But I think it needs to be bolder, which is why I was sort of disappointed that she picked Tim Kaine, because he's not a bold enough choice to excite the base.
Well, I think the change we need is in the Senate and the House of Representatives.
We do.
But we also need Hillary to have a bold agenda, and I am concerned about her. For instance, I think Tim Kaine was a rational, understandable, cautious choice for someone who is trying to bring in Republican voters to vote for the Democrats.
Tim gets along very well in the Senate with Republicans as well as you can.
As did Hillary. But then I start thinking, who is she going to appoint to the Supreme Court?
Right, and the cabinet and all those things.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court would be my first thing.
Well, in his speech, Obama said, and we are trying to focus here on some of the gay aspects of it. Not
ready for speeches
Not
yet.
ready for speeches yet. Obama, we're talking here.
Yeah.
When we change enough minds, then progress does happen. And if you doubt that, just ask the Marine who proudly serves his country without hiding the husband he loves.
Yes,
that's
that
a nice
was
one.
nice.
And look, I've been a big critic of Mike Bloomberg on this show and elsewhere for many, many years, but I thought he gave a great speech.
He did.
He called Trump a demagogue, and he spoke of progress from Selma to Stonewall. Stealing a line from President Obama there.
I liked it when he said, "I'm a New Yorker and I know a con when I see one."
Oh, it was really
Boom!
until the con spoke. It was really the most effective speech of the convention.
And the con saying, "Have you even read the U.S. Constitution?" was what lifted all of us out of our chairs to just scream.
The whole setup was so moving.
Yep.
And it does give you the right and the privilege to say things that others can't say. I mean, they've even gone over the fact that, obviously Trump has reacted horribly to all this.
Mm-hmm.
But when George Bush was attacked by Cindy Sheehan, who lost her son in the Iraq War, he did not take that kind of an attitude.
They've been playing his soundbite today as I was watching.
He said, "I understand. I mean, I disagree with her, but I understand where she's coming from." And
All right. So we saw the cons, but there was also another very moving speech at the convention by what's her name?
Christine Leninen.
She is the mother of one of the guys killed at the Orlando Pulse nightclub.
Christopher and Christopher's boyfriend Juan Guerrero was also killed, and she talks about that. She was on TV immediately at the scene at the Pulse, not knowing what happened to her son, and knowing that Juan was already dead, and she became the face on the outside of the families immediately at the Pulse 2 months ago.
And she appeared at the podium at the Democratic National Convention with two friends of her son, two young guys, sort of supporting her and holding her up.
Literally holding her up.
And they were preceded by Lee Daniels, the wonderful director and producer and
Of The
writer.
Butler and other things.
And Empire, who gave a very strong speech against guns. Really, out gay, father of a child or two. And he was very impressive, I thought, and very strong. So you see him sort of lingering in the background as she speaks. But we wanted to take the time to show you this speech because it wasn't in prime time, and unless you're obsessive like me watching the
I watched
convention.
it too in London.
It was later at night for you. You may not have seen this, but this is well worth watching whether you've seen it before or not.
It takes about 5 minutes for a church bell to ring 49 times. I know this because last month, my son Christopher, his boyfriend Juan, and 47 others were murdered at a club in Orlando. Christopher was my only child. As I used to tell him, you can't do better than perfect. He had so many friends, two of whom are here tonight representing hundreds and hundreds more. All his life, he brought people together. In high school, he won the Anne Frank Humanitarian Award for starting the Gay-Straight Alliance. Christopher's paternal grandparents met and fell in love in a Japanese internment camp. So it was in his DNA that love always trumps hate. Christopher was a big Hillary supporter. That's why I'm here, so that I can tell you about the day he was born. At the time, I was a Michigan State Trooper. When I went into labor, the hospital put my off-duty gun in a safe. I didn't argue. I know common sense gun policies save lives. The weapon that murdered my son fires 30 rounds in 1 minute. An Orlando City Commissioner pointed out the terrible math. 1 minute for a gun to fire so many shots, 5 minutes for a bell to honor so many lives. I'm glad common sense gun policy was in place the day Christopher was born. But where was that common sense the day he died? I never want you to ask that question about your child. That's why I support Hillary Clinton.
That's it. That's, well, very, 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 very moving.
Very, and I appreciate the Democrats for featuring
What did Trump
her.
have to say about her?
Well, you know, after
I'm
the
going to protect.
massacre.
I would have protected her,
Yeah.
her son, because everybody would have had guns. Oh, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Well.
Whatever.
Well, Chelsea Clinton spoke at a luncheon for HRC, and she said that she felt that what do you call it? Conversion therapy was child abuse. That's a rather bold statement. Good for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the conventional wisdom on our part these days. The other person who was featured at the convention of particular interest to us was Sarah McBride. She's a young trans woman who works for the Human Rights Campaign.
She's their spokesperson.
One of them, I think.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And so she spoke, a lot of publicity about first out transgender person to speak at a political convention. She was introduced by Chad Griffin.
Sean Patrick Maloney.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Chad spoke at another time.
Yes, he did. Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney.
But Marissa Richmond, who is a trans activist from Tennessee, was a timekeeper at the convention. And Mara Kiesling, another trans activist, was on the platform committee.
I remember when it was a big deal that we just got somebody on the platform committee, Jenny Apuzzo, many, many years ago when Jimmy Carter was running.
27 or 28, I say that because I've read both, out trans people as delegates to the Democratic Convention. And as we said last week, I think just over 11% of all the delegates to the Democratic Convention were LGBT. We have not heard the corresponding number from the Republican Convention.
There were some.
I'm going to take a wild guess it was lower than 11%
Yes.
of out delegates.
Because we know how well... how active
Tinder was doing, or
Grindr,
Tinder, or whatever. But we wanted to show you a little of
During the Republican
Sarah
Convention.
McBride, because she also made an excellent impact and was well received by the crowd at the convention.
Sarah McBride.
Thank you so much, Congressman. My name is Sarah McBride, and I am a proud transgender American. Four years ago, I came out as transgender while serving as student body president in college. At the time, I was scared. I worried that my dreams and my identity were mutually exclusive. Since then, though, I've seen that change is possible. I witnessed history interning at the White House and helping my home state of Delaware pass protections for transgender people.
And you can see the whole speech online. Sarah McBride, DNC, will get you the entire speech.
Go to HRC's website. There was a black gay man living with HIV, Daniel Driffin, who spoke about the progress we've made in the fight against AIDS and hopes for an AIDS-free generation.
Now, I was struck by the, all the debate over the hacking of the emails of the DNC and the hacking, potential hacking of Hillary's emails, but the hacking of the DNC emails that showed that they had favored Hillary over Bernie.
Really?
Well, the thing is, this all
It's pretty obvious.
comes out of, yes, of course, comes out of WikiLeaks, run
Julian
by
Assange.
Julian Assange. Now,
He has
there-
more up his sleeve in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he lives.
But there's also a subtext to this, because Julian Assange is angry at Hillary and at the U.S. government for what they've done to Chelsea Manning. Because Chelsea, in the Army, gathered a bunch of information, supposedly secret information, about the sins of the U.S. military in Iraq and the Middle East, and gave them to WikiLeaks. And Julian, and then got arrested in 2010 for this, and as a trans woman, as she then self-identified, was put into a men's prison at Fort Leavenworth, where she remains to this day. And Julian Assange is furious, rightfully so, I think. So,
and where Chelsea has attempted suicide, and they now want to punish her for doing this by restricting privileges and things like that.
They have restricting privileges. They want to put her in solitary for perhaps forever. They have accused her of administrative offenses. At one point, that was using out-of-date toothpaste, but the suicide attempt is now being punished with solitary confinement. They refuse an ongoing refusal to give her any transition care, and even though they've been ordered to do so.
And supposedly we're accepting transgender people in the military, so why shouldn't
exactly.
they?
So they're basically torturing Chelsea Manning.
To death.
Yes, well, whatever. But Julian Assange feels committed to Chelsea, and a lot of why the Democratic National Committee emails were hacked and are being released by WikiLeaks, perhaps in a slow dribble that is going to continue to screw things
Well, you
up.
have to add some interest to this show if it's going to go on for the next several months.
Well, watch out.
I know a lot of you just want it to be over. We do too.
Watch out for what happens to Chelsea Manning.
Right. And I read that the letter Q was kept off the Democratic Party's LGBT platform. Unlike Donald Trump, LGBTQ, you were discussing that he doesn't know what it stands for. I don't think he knows what any of it stands for. I don't think he knows what NATO stands for.
Well, we'll never know unless someone asks him.
Anyway.
Actually, what he said was LGBTQ.
It's a new sandwich. Well, we're also getting complaints that there are too many letters, and if people can come up with a whole new, good, better word, we're open to it.
Yes, but Gay USA is a brand name that has existed for 30 years, and we are very self-conscious about the fact that it does not say LGBTQIA, etc.
But we try to cover the waterfront, as you know, on this show.
Yeah. We're also, during the convention, the local Philadelphia organization, Equality Forum, was holding a conference and doing various things, including dedicating an historic marker for Barbara Giddings, who co-founded with Frank Kameny and others the first real demonstrations in Philadelphia, starting in 1965.
Let's not forget Randy Wicker in 1964 demonstrating at the Induction Center.
I said one of. Yeah, and Randy, I think, worked with these guys too.
Sure, he was there.
Yeah. Anyway.
And shortly afterwards, Vice President Joe Biden conducted his first same-sex wedding. We have a picture of it. Two White House staffers. The couple, Brian Mosteller, is the director of the Oval Office operations and Obama's anticipator-in-chief, and Joe Mashi, Michelle Obama's trip coordinator. They specifically requested the vice president to do this. He said he was proud to do so. He couldn't be happier. They're two great guys, Joe said. You can just see him saying it. Like, we're good for him.
Maybe if Trump gets replaced on the ticket by Mitt Romney or Mike Pence, the Democrats could counter with dumping Hillary and putting Joe Biden in.
It'll be like a game. It'll be, of chicken. See.
Let's throw in some Republican news, too. The Republican convention in Cleveland evidently bumped their Pride Festival, and then the people running it started this whole thing about, well, we have to cancel it. We can't get security in place. It's post-Orlando.
So a new group has come together to make it happen on August the 13th in Cleveland.
And the New England Journal of Medicine did an analysis on Pence that said his opposition to needle exchange really helped create and increase that big HIV outbreak they had in southern Indiana.
I mean, the mayor of New York opposed it. I'm talking about David Dinkins, who was a friend of mine, opposed it in New York for a long time until we finally convinced him. I mean, everybody drag their ass on that.
But that was 30 years ago. This is now.
Okay.
And Pence was also closing the Planned Parenthood clinics that were offering free HIV testing. The cruise fundraiser held by the gay hotel owners, Ian Reisner and Maddie Wiederpass, here a year ago, 2 years ago? When was it?
No, it was last year. It was a long campaign.
Finally has come back to bite them. The Out Hotel is biting the dust. They've sold out to someone else. And Marco Rubio, our friend Marco Rubio, who says he was so affected by the Pulse massacre, is appearing at an extreme right-wing conference in Orlando this month.
Second anniversary of the Pulse mass shooting.
Second month anniversary.
Yeah.
The conference is called Rediscovering God in America and stars every right-wing evangelical leader you care to name. And yes, there were nude photos of Melania Trump in the New York Post, particularly with another woman cuddling.
Looks like Vanessa Williams.
But the Trump campaign did that because the Post is a big Trump outlet.
It is a Rupert Murdoch paper. He also owns Fox News.
And this was done at the height of the controversy over the Khan speaking. The Trump campaign was trying to distract from that by publishing nude photos of Melania.
It didn't work. I'm gay. I don't want to look at them.
And Trump's reaction to them was, that's standard fashion photography.
Well. Okay. There was also a demonstration in Washington, D.C. by Gays Against Guns outside the National Sports Shooting Foundation. We have a picture of it. Sports Shooting Foundation in Washington. The conference in Washington. This gun group, the National Sports Shooting Foundation, is based in Newtown, Connecticut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we may be going up there around Labor Day to do something more with them.
And prominent leaders in both the LGBT and gun control movements have created a working group. And they are hashing out strategy and planning a Washington, D.C. rally that aims to capitalize on the hallmarks of the gay movement, street activism, like we're going to apply what we applied to AIDS and marriage.
Yeah,
and
there's a big anti-gun rally and march in Washington, I think August 27th. I'll let you know more when I know more. There's another.
August 27th. Mark your books.
Gays Against Guns New York meets Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, at the Community Center at 7:30 if you want to show up and get involved.
We're ready to catch people up on all the legal news?
Yes.
Well, in North Carolina, HB2, their anti-LGBT law, was in court, and the U.S. District Judge Thomas Schroeder pressed the state of North Carolina to show how the law made anyone safer and whether it was necessary, and a ruling is expected soon. Governor Pat McCrory.
Well, the ruling is our side went to court and said, don't let this law go into effect while we are going through a much longer judicial process to decide whether it's constitutional.
Put a hold on it.
Yeah,
and Governor Pat McCrory is funding his side of the legal, he's using outside counsel, and he's funding it with disaster relief funds in North Carolina.
Well, he is a disaster.
And he's up for re-election.
We do need relief from him.
Is he not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. He's running against Roy Cooper, the Attorney General.
Good guy.
Yes. So the bad news comes from...
Seventh Circuit.
Yes. A case in Chicago, actually about something that happened in Indiana. Indiana does not have statewide protections, thank you, Mike Pence, for sexual orientation or gender identity non-discrimination. So a lesbian was working at a college there, and she got refused promotion and eventually lost her job.
Ivy Tech Community College.
Because she is a lesbian. So she went to court, and the Seventh Circuit, based in Chicago, says that because of precedents in their circuit, they could not rule that discrimination against her for sexual orientation was included in the Title VII law against sex discrimination.
Shannon Minter called the decision baffling and untenable. Lambda says it shows that we need the Equality Act that explicitly covers us,
Well, that
LGBT
in fact
people.
is what the court said. The court said, look, this decision stinks. We know that. We don't want to do this. We would like to decide differently, but the precedents we have before us say we can't do any differently. Our side would argue with that and say, look, if you think it should be the other way, you can rule the other way. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. There are lots of other decisions that are moving in that direction. If you don't have to rule the wrong way.
Well, even this judge sounded, who wrote the opinion, sounded kind of conflicted about it. But
that's what I just said.
You know.
So, but what the court said was it has to go higher to the Supreme Court. They have to decide, or Congress has to act and pass explicit protections, i.e. the Equality Act. Now, this certainly will be appealed, and maybe this will be something that takes it to the Supreme Court, and then we can get that decision.
We've done better with transgender cases using sex discrimination than we are doing with sexual orientation cases. Then there are transgender cases like the Gavin Grimm case in Virginia. This is a kid in school. He's going to be in dead before they ever do this decision. No, he's in high school and he wants to use gender-appropriate restrooms, and
as he used to.
As he used to, and so lawyers for the school system, Gloucester County School Board, they want the Supreme Court to put a Fourth Circuit ruling in Gavin's favor. Put on hold pending appeals. But there's a 4-4 split in the Supreme Court, so that's unlikely without Scalia.
In other transgender legal news, we've been telling you that there have been 2 big cases filed by about a dozen states each, led by Texas and Nebraska, challenging the Obama suggested guidelines for how to treat trans students in schools. Even though none of the Obama administration has not mandated these guidelines or tried to prosecute anyone for not following them, nonetheless, all these states have gone into court to oppose them. Now, 12 states of a more progressive bent have filed a brief supporting the Obama trans student guidelines, opposing the Texas and Nebraska suits.
And in the Texas case, our side is urging the district court not to let the states game the system to keep transgender rights at bay.
And then there's Mississippi, where our real new hero,
Judge Carlton Reeves, an African-American judge, Democrat appointee.
He says that, contrary to what the state has asked him, no, you cannot enforce the anti-gay HB 1523 religious freedom law that specifically protects the religious bigotry of those who are anti-gay, as opposed to a broader religious exemption.
He castigated Governor Bryant for comparing the Mississippi law, and in particular provision that allows clerks to refuse marriage licenses to gay couples, to statutes that permit persons to opt out of going to war or performing abortions. He said issuing a marriage license to a same-sex couple is not like being forced into armed combat or assisting in an abortion. Matters of life and death are sui generis. He said, it was Roberta Kaplan called his decision poetry.
Because here's what he said. He said that to even suggest that this law is legitimate and that it is okay to discriminate so specifically against LGBT people betrays the fact that this is exactly the kind of animus that the Supreme Court has outlawed as unconstitutional.
In Romer v. Evans, in the Windsor case, and in the marriage equality cases.
Yes. So he said, look, the very arguments you are making are proving the case against you and showing you for the bigots you are. And that was a beautiful thing.
And let's go next door to Alabama, where Chief Justice Roy Moore has been suspended for his trying to block same-sex marriage. He's now represented by Matt Staver of the lawyer for Kim Davis in Kentucky. And
Liberty Counsel.
He's challenging his suspension and his potential removal, saying, I never tried to stop same-sex marriage. Well, that is a lie. You're a Christian. It's a sin to tell a lie.
Everybody lies these days.
It's in the Ten Commandments. Anyway, he's been ordered to turn over. Moore has been unredacted memos he sent to the state's probate judges.
Can't wait.
That'll be fun.
Those are some emails I would like to see. Meanwhile, the Liberty Counsel has joined the Family Research Council in withdrawing their support for the First Amendment Defense Act because, now it subjects heterosexuals to the same standard.
We can't have that.
Oh, no. In
Chicago, we told you about this guy who worked for a Catholic church. I think he was an organist, a music director at Holy Family Church in Inverness, near Chicago. He's been
Colin Collette.
He is suing the archdiocese, and they're saying, we have a religious exemption, go away. And the judge is letting this case go forward because, they have to prove that he has a ministerial function as the music director. Well, we'll see what happens there.
It's an opportunity to define how broad these religious exemptions are.
Religious groups just can't, for instance, when priests or ministers sexually harass people, they are subject to civil law, and they are subject to the anti-discrimination laws.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're rarely held accountable by those laws because they're just sent off to rehab centers in New Mexico or Arizona where they...
And Donald Trump said that their victims should just go work somewhere else.
I thought that was one of the worst things he said. Sexually harassed women in the workplace should go find another job.
I mean... It's horrific.
When people talk about supporting Trump, my advice to people now when confronted with someone like that is to say to them, do you really think Donald Trump is qualified to be president? I know you hate Hillary. I know whatever. But really, do you think Donald Trump is qualified to be president? And
what do they say?
I yearn for the opportunity to ask that question.
Okay.
Generally, they deflect and talk about how they hate Hillary.
Well, that's the way he does. He likes to deflect when you ask him a question, too.
It's all about deflection.
But some of it isn't working. In Kansas, they had a primary this past week. At least 10 conservative Republicans in the legislature lost their seats in the primary to just regular conservatives instead of nutcases. And they include the Senate Majority Leader, Terry Bruce. Moderate Republicans made the election a referendum on the state's budget problems and battles over continuing education funding. So people are starting to come off the side.
In Kansas, you bet. Sam Brownback has just completely ruined that state. The idea that the Republicans are pressing this thing that they can salve the economy is insanity. And good news from Florida, where 20 Republican leaders, mostly local state leaders, have signed a pledge to support a statewide sexual orientation, gender identity, non-discrimination law. Those 20 local Republican leaders in Florida. That's a post-Orlando
And we got a good ruling from the Fourth Circuit on North Carolina's voter restrictions. Now, and we're starting to win these cases across the country. Why does it matter to gay people? Because these laws were enacted with discriminatory intent. And as you were just saying, that's what we're trying to prove in these other cases.
Animus, yes. In Seattle, the city council unanimously voted to bar conversion therapy for minors. That's a good thing.
And that's another thing that Mike Pence supports is conversion therapy.
Yes, it'd be interesting to ask Donald Trump that question. I'm sure he doesn't understand what that is.
Right. In Massachusetts, they enacted the first equal pay law signed by Governor Charlie Barker, making it illegal for employers to inquire about your salary or wage history. Women now make 82 cents. What was it when we were kids? 70 cents?
70-something.
70 cents. Now it's 82 cents on the dollar to men. This will be helpful. And it was passed unanimously.
Yeah. Well,
unanimously.
It's in the news a lot these days. And the British government has warned 50,000 British citizens who are vacationing in Florida that they should not have unprotected sex because they could be transmitting the Zika virus. In Michigan, the Greater Lansing Area Sports Hall of Fame honored sports writer Bob Gross, a local legend, but they neglected to say that he was gay, he was closeted, and he was murdered by a guy he picked up 20 years ago, strangled, stabbed, and burned completely.
Terrible.
He worked for the Lansing State Journal. He really was a local legend, and they wouldn't talk about it either.
And in Cleveland, a transgender woman named Sky Maccabee was found dead on Saturday morning. She was 26. Injuries are described as suspicious, but police have little information about her death. She is at least the 15th transgender person killed in the U.S. this year. Most have been black women. Now, we do say a lot of bad things about Donald Trump. We're not a partisan show, but we have to report the bad things that he does. But he's done some good things. He is fostering love. There are gay people getting married because of Donald Trump.
Really?
Because they're scared. They're in binational couples, and if one of them is a Muslim, they're scared that the guy's never going to be able to be in the country. Seriously. So these two guys, Shiraz Salahuddin, who was Muslim from Pakistan, and Andrew Sharanian, who was Mormon from Utah. They met in a bar a couple of years ago, and they were coming to New York to sort of renew the Pakistani guy's passport, as visa. And they said, let's just get married. Let's not have a party. Let's just get married. And they did. And then the guy has to show the passport to the Pakistani consulate, and they say, are you married? And he says, yes, and he gives the name, and he's nervous as hell. He's with his own people, and they said, his name is Andrew? His name is Andrew? And he says, yes. They said, okay, next. And all was relieved. So don't be so nervous about doing it.
Sure. I mean, the U.S. Navy is naming a military sea lift command fleet oiler the Harvey Milk.
We got a picture of Harvey. Back in the day, he was in the Navy.
He was a lieutenant diving officer.
He was a pretty conservative guy when he was young. He was on Wall Street.
He was wearing his Navy diver's belt buckle when he was killed.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, it turns out there's a whole class of Navy boats that are named for civil rights leaders. It's the John Lewis class. So the U.S. Navy has a lot of boats named for civil rights leaders.
John Lewis.
The U.S. Congressman? Yes,
yeah.
yes.
That's nice.
And now they're going to have one named after Harvey Milk.
Right. We didn't do all the Republican news. There's an anti-gay Republican in Nebraska named Bill Kinter. He's under pressure to resign because there's a sexually explicit video of himself that was found on state computers. Now, the state's governor has called for him to resign because he is married to one of the governor's top aides. But they're not disclosing what kind of a video this is, but he loudly opposed same-sex marriage, gay adoption, and transgender rights. He publicly declared, this guy, that Christians should let gays know their business isn't wanted by providing them with bad service.
Wow.
That's a very Christian attitude there,
Very.
Bill. I hope you get what's coming to you.
Well, Hilton Hotels wants to provide us with good service, and they took out an ad in Travel and Leisure magazine with two men in bed together.
Let's get a picture of that up.
Yeah, we have that picture. They're both wearing like a tank top and a T-shirt, but they are certainly looking friendly. Maybe we'll find that ad before I finish talking. Anyway, the American Family Association is freaking out about this, and wants
because this is coming. This magazine goes into people in doctors' offices and auto repair shops. Hey, this show
does it go into Pakistani consulates?
This show. Why aren't you showing that picture, Rich? I mean, what is it? Are you afraid that this is going to go into people's homes?
They're clothed. I have to imagine the control room cannot find the picture, or its system is down.
Okay.
Meanwhile, all right, the last national story I have is the internet overlords.
Yes.
ICANN. There's acronym I can't explain to you. But they're the ones who decide on internet addresses and not stories, but the operation of the internet. Well, there's a grassroots community group that's been trying to get .gay as an internet address. Well, the overlords have once again rejected it. They want to auction this off to the highest bidder. And the community group that wants it is more of a nonprofit, operate for the good of the community thing.
Imagine that.
Yeah, well, now there's an ombudsman for this operation that says this is discrimination. Imagine. So the grassroots group is going to appeal this decision. There's going to be more talk about it.
I don't quite know what that signal was from Bill, but,
Okay.
away we go.
Away we go to international news.
The Olympics are this week, and there are at least 40 openly lesbian, gay, and bisexual Olympians to watch in Rio. Most of them seem to be women, majority.
Oh, sure. The soccer players,
Field hockey. Yep. One of them is a bronze medal winner from the London Olympics, Tom Daley, the British diver.
He's not a woman.
No, not that I know of. All right.
No, but it's all those great women on the U.S. soccer team and other teams around the world.
Not so great is what Pope Francis did this past week. He was in Poland meeting with the bishops, and the Vatican released this transcript of his remarks. He condemned young people being taught about transgender choice. They call transgender choice in schools. Here's what he said. We are living in a moment of annihilation of man as the image of God. Today, children are taught this at school, that everyone can choose their own sex. And why do they teach this? Because the books come from those people and institutions who give them money. Are you kidding me? I mean, I thought the guy was kind of smooth in public, but when he gets behind the scenes and he says a lot of hateful things. It's not the first hateful thing he said about transgender folks.
Nonetheless, parents of gay kids in Poland asked him to help stop homophobic attacks. Gay organizations in Poland have been burned. Gay people have been beaten. Given what he said behind closed doors, I don't hold out a lot of hope for him to start lecturing against homophobia.
In Iran, we have just learned through Amnesty International that another gay boy, 17 years old, was hanged
he's 19 now. He was 17 when he was arrested.
17 when he was arrested.
Yeah.
He was a juvenile. He was not allowed counsel. They accused him of raping another boy because the father reported this, but the two of them were saying this was consensual. Well, the father would hear none of that, and none of this was allowed to be introduced in court, and they hanged him. Oh, but they did him a favor. While they held him in prison, they wouldn't tell him that he was going to be hanged for 7 months because they didn't want to upset him.
Also, if they had accepted it as a consensual relationship, they would have hanged both of them.
Oh, right. Because usually they say the inserted partner is the one who gets hanged.
The explanation I read today was if it's rape, they hang the attacker. If it's consensual, they kill them both.
I'm not trying to make a joke about this, but in the armed services in the United States in the old days, if you were the inserted partner, you would not get thrown out. It was the person who was...
because you were the man?
Yes.
Oh, God. Also in Iraq, next door, equal opportunity, ISIS takes credit for throwing another supposedly gay man off a roof in southern Kirkuk. And then when he's on the ground dead, the ISIS people tell the crowd that is down there, keep stoning him. He's already dead, but keep throwing stones at him.
Well, better news from Italy, and we got some B-roll here, I hope, of Unione Civili in Italy. There they are. It's a little a sequence of this is Pier Giorgio Paterlini and Marco Socci. This was one of the first civil unions that were done in Italy, and it was done all over the country. And, you get to see these same joyous pictures of people finally breaking through and being out. Italy is really the last country in Western Europe to do this, isn't it?
And they still haven't done full marriage. This is civil
Germany
unions.
hasn't either.
Yeah, well, that's true. but it is a step forward, and yes, they are the last Western European country to do this.
But in Romania, the Constitutional Court affirmed a proposal stating that marriage can only occur between a man and a woman, and now it faces both a vote in Parliament and a nationwide referendum.
In Sweden, the Prime Minister marched in the Pride Parade, and Justin Trudeau in Canada hit another Pride Parade in Vancouver, which had as its Grand Marshal a gay Syrian refugee, as did the New York City Pride Parade earlier this summer.
In Australia, our friend Rodney Croom, who has headed up one of the Australian marriage equality, is leading that group because he wants to fight this a referendum wholeheartedly, whereas the Australian marriage equality is trying to prepare for it if they're going to have to face it. So he just wants to fight it, and he says the best way for me to do this is to leave and just become lobby against it.
Real pro-marriage people in Australia want the Parliament to vote on marriage and pass it and be done with it.
It's got 81 votes in the Parliament. There are enough to pass, but the Prime Minister won't allow it.
He won't allow it because he rules by virtue of a coalition of groups, some of whom will desert him if he allows Parliament to vote, and therefore he doesn't want a Parliament to vote. So he says, let the people have a plebiscite, a referendum on this, and then it'll come back to the Parliament.
The Australian census is going to offer an other option for the gender question on there.
Yeah, but you have to write it in. It doesn't say male, female, other, or whatever. It says you have to write it in if you're not going to be the binary gender.
You think we'd be safe on Mykonos in Greece. It's got a reputation as a gay island, but a London gay couple was beating unconscious after a night out there.
And we've told you last week about how in the Cayman Islands they had decided to treat same-sex married couples married elsewhere the same as heterosexual married couples for immigration purposes, while still not allowing same-sex marriage on the Cayman Islands. But even that has riled up the right-wing religious community. The Anglicans and the Seventh-day Adventists have put aside their differences to unite to fight homosexuality. They're going to have a big rally in September. You might not want to go to the Cayman Islands then.
Well, I mean, in 1991, when a guy in the Isle of Man was born who just got married there because they've opened it up there, homosexuality was punishable by life imprisonment. But
it's punishable by death in Iraq and Iran now.
This is the Isle of Man. This is in the British Commonwealth. But they're getting married there now.
Belize, they've had a court case ongoing to try to decriminalize sodomy. The Chief Justice has once again, this case has been going on for 3 years, postponed a decision. He says he's sick. Maybe there will be a decision next week. Maybe there won't.
Okay.
We'll keep an eye on it.
All right.
Okay.
AIDS news?
Yes.
Well, a little bit more out of the Durban conference, and Peter Pyatt, who was formerly the head of UNAIDS and now teaches in London about this, he just says, look, it really, especially in Africa, is like rowing a boat with a hole in it. We're not going to be able to end it in 2030 unless there's a lot more funding, but a lot more culture change. He says even when we can get drugs to people, they're available, they can get tested, many are refusing to take them because they don't want to take them unless they're sick. And if you don't take it while you're not sick, you are going to still infect other people. Now, obviously we need more support services so that people will do this and there'll be more compliance.
Studies have shown that if you monitor people regularly, there's a labor-intensive process, that you can get people to comply. But there remains a need for an urgency around this, and that has pretty much dissipated.
Let's go
I know.
along, all right?
San Francisco Department of Health has a new PrEP advertising campaign. We have a picture. OurSexualRevolution.org will give you all the facts about PrEP.
NHS England has been told they can provide PrEP, so they're gearing up for it, but they're appealing that decision. And in San Diego County, where they haven't had a meningitis case this year, they're urging gay and bisexual men and anyone with HIV to get vaccinated.
I think it's time to get on to your London theater reviews.
If I can find them.
I will just tell you that there's a new movie opening in New York this week and later in L.A. Front cover about young gay Asians in the New York fashion world.
Okay.
Our associate producer, Bill Ballman, saw it and said it's worth seeing. It's a valiant effort, if not the greatest thing ever.
Even if you're not planning on going to London, some of these plays will be shown in cinemas around the world, actually, including the first one I saw, which is Ralph Fiennes and Richard III.
Wow.
He is the best I've ever seen in the role. And now there he is. Now, the character of Buckingham is off to the right there, played by Finbar Lynch. It reminded me very much of Corey Lewandowski and Donald Trump, I have to say, because Buckingham is the one who goes along with everything and he gets fired. And of course,
doesn't almost anything remind us of that these days?
Vanessa Redgrave was in that show, too. She played a rather batty Queen Margaret. Then I know Ann Northrup does not like farces. But
not very few.
But this is Alan Ayckbourn's How the Other Half Loves from 1969, and it was absolutely hilarious. Essentially, that's Nicholas Prevost and what's the other woman's name? Gillian Wright. Well, what they do is one set, but it's several homes, and they're on the stage at the same time all the time. So it requires absolutely brilliant comic timing. It's just a wonder to behold.
Well, you need a good script to do good farce. There is stupid farce.
Alan Ayckbourn,
okay.
who I just saw. Then the next one was Plow on the Stars. Now this is Sean O'Casey.
Old time.
He writes in 1926 a satire on the Easter Rebellion, because it's the 100th anniversary now. Mm-hmm. That's why they're reviving it. And I have to say, Sean O'Casey was a radical. He objected to the movement for liberation because he said it wasn't socialist enough, it became too nationalist. He dropped out, so he writes a play 10 years later that causes riots because he kind of satirizes the people in it. So you have scenes like this, which are funny, but it's a very serious subject, and I think it deserves a better. I mean, Sean O'Casey. All right. A better political drama with political overtones was Sunset at the Villa Thalia by Alexei K. Campbell. He wrote the gay play The Pride. He's an out gay playwright, and he wrote Women in Gold, the Helen Mirren movie script about. So this is set in Greece on the cusp of the coup in 1967, and nine years later, you've got Ben Miles from Wolf Hall and. Elizabeth McGovern, Lady Grantham from Downton Abbey, playing an American couple, but they're kind of ugly Americans, and they meet with a British couple. I thought it was terrific, and I hope it comes here. Next, the National is also reviving Terence. This is another one you can see in cinemas. It's Terence Rattigan's The Deep Blue Sea from 1952. It's about a woman trying to commit suicide after her affair goes wrong. It's very grim, but. Rattigan first wrote it as a gay play because his own partner had left him, gone with someone else, and committed suicide. So anyway, the next one is the Donmar Warehouse reviving Brian Friel's The Faith Healer. That's Stephen Delane. You'll recognize him from a lot of productions. It's also got Gina McKee. And the next picture is Ron Cook. It's 4 monologues. Shouldn't work. It does. And then the last but not least, I finally saw In the Heights by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton. It's playing at the King's Cross Theater there. So, it's wonderful.
Okay, and that's it for us. We are done, and we will see you next week.
My full reviews will be at gaycitynews.com in a few days.